Now on the record, my name is James Arndt. I'm a videographer for Galco Litigation Services. Today's date is November 16th, 2018. The time is 9 a.m. This video deposition is being held in St. Louis, Missouri in the matter of the National Prescription Opiate Litigation for the United States District Court, Northern District of Ohio, Eastern Division. The deponent is Jim Rausch. Will counsel please identify themselves?
Dean Kawamoto, Gary Gatto, and Erica Keach from Keller Rohrbach on behalf of the MDL plaintiffs.
Good morning, Rocky Tsai, Ropes and Gray, representing the witness, and Mallinckrodt.
William Davison, Ropes and Gray, representing the witness, Mallinckrodt.
Jason Tilley, Mallinckrodt Pharmaceuticals.
Sarah Conway on behalf of Walmart.
Tricia Hirschfeld on behalf of the Stalbus and Dunaway plaintiffs for the Tennessee State litigation.
Court reporter is Carrie Campbell. She will now swear in the witness.
Could everyone on the phone please identify themselves?
Yes, this is Patrick Yingling from Amerisource Bergen.
Jake Percy, Fox Rothschild for Validus in the Arkansas lit.
Could you state that again? Sorry, you guys spoke over each other.
This is Jake Persky from Fox Rothschild on behalf of Validus Pharmaceuticals in the Arkansas matter.
Michelle Yoakum from Covington and Burling on behalf of McKesson.
Holly McNamara on behalf of Cardinal Health.
Paul Ricard on behalf of Prescription Supply, Inc.
Trace ready, please, sir. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Rausch.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here today. So my name is Dean, and my colleagues are Gary and Erica. I'm going to plan to take a break probably around every hour, but if you need one, earlier, just please let me know.
Okay.
Could you please state your name and business address?
James Rausch, and I'm currently retired.
Okay. And you understand that you're under oath, right, sir?
Yes.
And are you taking any medications, or is there any other reason that would interfere with your ability to answer my questions fully and truthfully?
I'm taking medications, but it wouldn't interfere with being able to answer the questions.
Thank you. And if I ask a question you don't understand, please let me know and I will try to rephrase it.
Okay.
Have you ever testified in a deposition?
No.
Okay. So, some basic ground rules, just primarily for the benefit of the court reporter, but it's very important that when I ask you a question that you answer verbally as opposed to nodding or shaking your head.
Okay.
And it's also very important that we not speak over each other. So I'll ask my question and then I'll let you answer. Your attorney may object for the record. Unless he instructs you not to answer, though, you are to answer the question.
Okay.
Have you ever testified at trial?
Once.
And can you describe what was the nature of that trial?
Someone stole firearms from my house or my apartment at the time. I went to testify on identifying the firearm.
Okay. And who are the other people seated next to you today?
These are the lawyers. They're representing Mallinckrodt.
And are they also your attorneys?
They represent me.
Okay. And are you paying them to be here today?
No.
Okay. Do you know who is paying them?
Mallinckrodt.
So, sir, I want to ask you a few questions about your deposition preparation. Did you review any documents in preparation for this deposition?
That's attorney-client privilege.
My understanding, and Rocky can object if he feels he needs to, but I'm not asking you to identify for me the documents that you reviewed. I just want to know if you reviewed any documents.
You can answer.
Yes.
And did you review any deposition transcripts or other trial testimony?
No.
Excuse me, Mr. Kawamoto.
Yes.
Can I have you move your microphone onto your lapel?
Sure.
I'm just getting a little bit of rustling.
Okay. Is that better?
That's fine.
And did you review any expert reports?
Excerpt report?
Expert reports, my apologies. Okay. Do you recall reviewing any court documents?
No.
And what about any electronic records, for example, any databases?
No.
Now, have you looked at your own personal paper or electronic files to prepare for this deposition?
No, I've been retired for almost 6 years.
Now, I take it you spoke with your attorneys prior to this deposition. Is that fair?
Yes.
And do you recall whether it was in person or by phone or both?
In person.
And on how many occasions did you speak with them?
3 times.
And do you recall roughly how many hours on each occasion it was?
Oh, 4 or 5 hours, roughly.
And this is 4 or 5 hours each time?
Yes.
Okay. And at these meetings, who was present?
Rocky and Bill?
And so no one else was present other than
No.
Rocky and Bill? Now, you indicated that you reviewed documents. Did any of those documents refresh your recollection regarding the issues at this deposition?
Yes. Consider that I've been retired for 6 years, so I had not seen any of these documents for quite a long time.
Okay. And I take it, Mr. Sai, if I ask him to identify those documents, you'll object on privilege?
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I will ask you to identify those. I will ask you to identify those documents, and Rocky.
I object on attorney-client privilege and work product grounds, and I instruct the witness not to answer to the extent the question is asking him to identify documents that were selected and compiled by counsel and discussed with counsel.
Okay. So I'm going to try to modify that question, and your attorney may also have the same objection, but can you generally describe for me the categories of documents that you looked at to refresh your recollection?
I believe that's attorney-client privilege. Emails, I guess, would be the answer to that.
And other than your attorneys, did you speak to anyone else to prepare for your deposition?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, sir, are you being reimbursed by anyone for your expenses in connection with this deposition?
No, sir.
And so Mallinckrodt is not compensating you for your time in connection with this deposition?
No, sir.
Can you strike that. Can you briefly describe your educational background after high school?
I went to college for 3 years and in pursuit of a major in psychology. And I was hired, this was in '76, I was hired as at Mallinckrodt as a summer replacement for people going on vacation. And I ended up staying on full-time, so I never did finish school.
And roughly when did you start working at Mallinckrodt?
1976.
And you say you retired 6 years ago, so forgive my math, but that would be 2012?
2013, January.
Okay. And so between 1976 and 2013, you were employed by Mallinckrodt?
That's correct.
And so you've never worked for anyone else other than Mallinckrodt?
Correct.
Have you completed any non-degree programs of study? And if you don't understand what that means, I'm happy to clarify.
Would you clarify that?
Have you taken any other courses or any training outside of Mallinckrodt? For example, do you have any regulatory certifications or professional licenses?
No.
Okay. So I'd like to ask you about your employment in Mallinckrodt, and recognizing that it covers 1976 to 2013, it's a broad time period, so I will understand if you don't remember the details, particularly from the earlier time. But can you generally walk me through the different positions that you've held since starting at Mallinckrodt?
Sure, I'll try. As I said, in 1976, I was hired as a replacement in customer service. It was a business that no longer is with Mallinckrodt. And I eventually was hired full-time. And after about a year, that business moved to Paris, Kentucky. And I stayed in St. Louis and got a position in the production and inventory control area in our bulk business.
Okay, and if I could pause you there. So when were you hired full-time? Roughly what year?
It was in '76.
And you were initially hired into customer service for a business that subsequently moved, or a business line that subsequently moved?
Right.
Okay. And then when did you go to production inventory, roughly
I would
what year?
say '77.
Okay. And I'm sorry, go ahead, you were saying something about, I think it was a bulk business?
Yes, the bulk business that Mallinckrodt had there. I was a production and inventory control planner.
And what did that entail? I'm not familiar with that term.
It entailed planning the production of inventory for the material that was to be sold. Based upon inventory levels, we would plan the raw materials that needed to be brought in, and then the production schedules for the production of the material.
And so you're talking about raw materials that would be, I guess, turned into pharmaceuticals?
This is not pharmaceuticals at that time. I was not in the pharmaceutical. I was in the specialty chemical business, which was for raw materials that went into foods and industrial applications. This was all down in our St. Louis plant, and this was a raw material. It was not a finished good.
And so is it fair to say that your job was to make sure that you had sufficient amounts of the raw materials to make the needed amounts of the finished goods?
That was part of it, yes. To make sure that the raw materials were scheduled, brought in on time, so when we were scheduling the run for making the product that we wanted to make was there in time.
And how long did you continue with those responsibilities?
I did that from approximately, well, I was a planner for several years, and then I became a supervisor over 4 or 5 planners. And I was in that position until 91. And then I went to work in customer service as a manager.
And was that still related to raw chemicals, or was that in
Yes.
pharmaceuticals? That was
Still, I had the acetaminophen, our acetaminophen customer service group. I had our specialty chemical group and our bulk narcotic group reporting to me. And I reported into the sales for the bulk area.
And what is the specialty chemical group?
Well, like I said, the specialty chemical group is for raw materials, for us to produce finished good raw materials for, say, food applications. We sold raw materials to Anheuser-Busch. We sold industrial chemicals, but they were all raw material. And then they would further take our raw material and combine it with their raw materials to make finished good or whatever the application they were using it for.
And none of these raw materials related to the manufacture of opioids. Is that fair?
That was another group. That was our bulk narcotic group.
Okay. And what can you define for me? What is a bulk narcotic
A
group?
bulk narcotic is a raw material that we produce from opiate, and the raw material is then sold to another manufacturer who adds other chemicals to our raw material to make a finished product. Pills, powder, tablets. We did not make a finished good product in the bulk area.
And the pills and powders and tablets, that would later be sold to, for example, distributors?
Yes. From the manufacturers that we sold to.
And when you say that you did not make a finished good or a product, that's with respect to the bulk narcotics. Is that correct?
Correct. And when I say finished good, in your terms, it was not in a tablet form or whatever. It was continued to be a raw material. That was considered our finished good.
Okay.
And it was sold in bulk quantities, 100 kilos or 100 pounds at a time.
So I just want to make sure that I've got the timing correct. So in '91, you became a manager, and you became a manager of the acetaminophen customer service group, the specialty chemical group, and the bulk narcotic group. Is that
That's
correct? And did you later go on to other positions, or did you stay in
Yes,
that
I had
position?
that position to approximately the fall of 2008. And then I took over customer service for the Dosage business.
And can you describe for me what the Dosage business is?
The Dosage business is when you take raw material products, opiate products, and combine them with other chemicals to make a finished good in a tablet or powder form.
And when you say you take raw material products, this was Mallinckrodt taking raw material products and making them into opioid products?
Yes.
Okay. And these opioid products would subsequently be shipped out to Mallinckrodt's customers, is that correct?
Yes, our distributor customers and that, yes.
And you held this position from 2008 until you retired in 2012? Or I'm sorry, 2013?
Correct.
Who was your predecessor in this position? I'm sorry, in this position?
Kathy Stewart.
You know, if I could go back to the bulk narcotics business for a
Yes.
second, do you recall who the manufacturers were who purchased bulk narcotics from Mallinckrodt?
Oh gosh, Purdue was one of the bigger ones. I don't remember all of them.
Well, do you recall if Indo purchased any?
Endo, I believe, was one of them. Yes.
Okay. What about Teva?
Yes.
What about Allergan?
I believe so.
Okay. How about Johnson & Johnson?
Yes.
How about Janssen?
I believe so.
Okay. So in the context of the bulk narcotics business, you sold to most of the major manufacturers in the market. Is that
Yes.
fair? Sir, was your retirement voluntary?
Yes.
Okay. So you could have stayed on if you would wanted to. You just decided it was time to go?
Yes.
And can you briefly, well, strike that. The position you held from fall of 2008 until 2013, what was your title?
Manager of customer service.
And it was manager of customer service for Dosage products? Is that the full?
Yes.
And what was your compensation scheme for your position? In other words, were you paid a base? Did you also have a bonus? How was that determined?
At the time, I reported into the logistics group, which included customer service, shipping, and warehousing. And we did have a bonus that was based upon back orders, how long it took us to answer the phone, that type of thing. Very customer service based compensation.
So do you recall in 2012, what was your base compensation?
As far as dollars?
Yes.
I don't remember.
And do you recall what your bonus was?
Oh, my base as far as salary?
Yes, your base salary.
It was in probably around 90,000.
And then do you recall what your bonus was for that year?
No, but it was like 10%.
Okay.
It was the most I could make if I met my objectives.
And Dean, I know that the depot transcripts are presumptively highly confidential, but because you're getting into personal financial information, I do want to designate this discussion as highly confidential.
Sure, that's fine. And the $90,000, was this more or less your base salary for the 2008 to 2013 time period?
Well, we had yearly reviews, and based upon reviews and if you met your goals and that type of thing, depending on what the percentage was for that year, it could go up or stay the same.
And were your reviews generally positive, in your opinion?
Yes.
Did anyone ever express any concern about your performance?
No.
And in terms of your goals, what are the goals that you recall that you were evaluated based on?
I don't remember many of them. It's been a long time. But again, like I said, it was based upon, say, call answering rate. We needed to have it above 95%. So we would keep track of that. That'd be one goal. Keeping our back orders down to, I forget what percentage, was another goal. We had other goals as far as having the CSRs attend our sign up for different seminars, and we were responsible for making sure that they met their goals there. So that was another thing that we were graded on. There's just a few that I can think of.
Were any of these goals compliance related?
Karen Harper would have yearly, if I remember right, overview of what was going on in compliance and kind of keep us abreast of any new regulations or anything like that that we may need to know about.
And so was your compensation based in part on your ability to comply with these new regulations?
No.
And who reported to you? You were a manager, so who were the people under you?
I had 5 CSRs, and 1 being a lead.
Okay, and do you recall their names?
No, not all of them. Brenda Raycop was the lead. I don't remember the rest of their names.
And who did you report to?
Well, at one time it was Michael Feeney and George. My last one was George. I forget his last name now.
Is it George Saffold?
Saffold, yes.
And you mentioned Karen Harper.
Yes.
Did you report to her?
No.
So going back to the bulk narcotics business, who would you say were your main competitors in that field?
Back then, we didn't have a whole lot of competitors within the United States. We had a sizable percentage of the production that the DEA allowed within the country. I don't remember who they were, but there wasn't many, because the DEA wanted to keep control of where the production, how much production was being put out, and who was producing it.
So would you describe yourself as essentially the dominant player in the bulk narcotics business?
I would say
Go ahead.
we were one of the larger producers.
And who are the other larger producers in that space?
Like I said, I don't remember.
Do you believe you were the largest producer in that space?
Objection Vegas to time.
Yes, it depends on the time frame that we're speaking. Early on, we were probably one of the largest ones. I'm not saying we were the largest or not. I don't remember, but we were one in the top 3, I would say.
Sure, and I understand that there are limits to your memory.
Right.
So, what was the time frame where it would be fair to say you were probably one of the largest?
Well, like I said, I don't remember.
Roughly, would this be in the 2000s, in the 90s?
Roughly probably in the 90s and early 2000s.
And then I guess when you say early 2000s, are we talking like 2005 to 2000? I'm sorry, 2000 to 2005 or 2006?
2000 to 2005 would be, from what I remember.
And then after 2005, you were still a a large producer, you just weren't the largest. Is that fair?
That's true.
Now, focusing on your position from 2008 to 2013, which is when you were the customer service manager for Dosage products.
Okay.
What training did you receive for that position?
Training was mostly done by the previous customer service rep manager, Kathy Stewart.
And do you recall what she did to train you?
We just went over the processes at the CSRs, and that had to what was needed as far as orders, forms needed from the customers before we could ship orders out, who their customers were, the product line, that type of thing.
And when you say who their customers were, are you referring to Mallinckrodt's direct customers or the customers of your customer?
Mallinckrodt's direct customers.
And when you say product line, what are you referring to?
This, the products that we sold in a finished good form. We're talking about hydrocodone, oxycodone, codeine, those type of products.
And are you referring to Mallinckrodt's generic products?
Yes.
Would the product lines you're responsible for also include Mallinckrodt's branded products?
Yes.
Now, are you familiar with the term suspicious order monitoring?
Yes, I am.
What does that term mean to you?
It was a process, well, depending on what time frame we're talking about, when I was in the bulk business as a customer service manager. When we first developed the suspicious order monitoring program, requested by our St. Louis DEA. It was a monthly report that we sent to them showing orders that were out of the ordinary as far as quantity or frequency, that type of report. It was sent to our DEA field office on a monthly basis.
Sorry. And roughly what time frame was this process in effect for?
Probably 2000 and I'm guessing because I don't remember exactly when we started, when they requested this, but I'd say probably 2003, 4 to 2006 or 7.
And I take it the process then changed in 2006 or 7?
That's correct.
Okay. And what was that different process then?
We started working on a more enhanced suspicious order program at the request of our compliance group to automate it so that we were capturing information on orders at the time of order was entered. It was based upon a lot more detail than what we had previously been supplying the DEA. The DEA was in the process of changing what they wanted to see and what they wanted to see their customers, I'll call them, or the registrants, what they wanted from the registrants. And it became more complex than what we had previously.
And so I guess for simplicity's sake, I will refer to the earlier suspicious order monitoring program as the pre-2007 program, and then the enhanced one as either the enhanced SOM or the post-2007. Does that make sense?
That's fine.
Okay. So for the pre-2007 SOM program, how did you identify the suspicious orders?
It was the system. It was put into our order entry system, and it was based upon a logarithm that we had come up with and designed, and was approved by the DEA field office, based upon the average order quantity, and I believe it was 2x was the quantity that would flag an order on our system. 2x meaning 2 times the normal order pattern that the customer placed. And it was a running total. So it wasn't just based upon a year, it was based upon the previous 12 rolling months.
And so just so I understand sort of mathematically how this works, are you essentially looking at the average over the past 12 months and then seeing if the new order is more than 2 times that average?
That's correct.
Okay. So if the average, I understand that there may be different sort of metrics, but if the average I had was, let's say, 50 bottles per month,
Correct.
that means that my new order could be, I guess, up to 100 bottles. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay.
And keep in mind, we not only had the suspicious order monitoring program, but the customers that we sold to also had to supply quota forms and that which was issued by the DEA on what they could buy. And 222 forms was another requirement, that had to be supplied with every order that they placed.
And are when you say quota forms, is that the same as a 222 form?
Quota forms were forms that were used for raw material manufacturers. 222 forms were used for researchers and other type of registrants, and also for the Dosage customers who were ordering Schedule II products.
Okay. So you wouldn't need both a quota form or a 22 form,
right,
or a 222 form. It was one or the other,
depending on their registration.
Okay. And for the 222 form, what would that tell you?
Are we getting away from the bulk side?
Yes. Well, why don't we focus on dosage and then we can come back to bulk?
Okay.
Because the 222 form isn't used in connection with bulk, correct?
222, no.
Okay.
The 222 form had to match the order that they were placing.
And when you say it had to match, what does that mean?
It couldn't be more than what the order couldn't be more than what was on the 222 form. Okay. And the 222 form was received from the DEA.
And so the DEA would tell your customer how much they could order on a monthly basis?
I don't think it was on a monthly basis. It was based, I'm not sure, I don't remember how the customer would get their 222 form, but everybody in the quota system, the DEA would take the total amount of a particular product, let's just say one product, that was sold in a particular year. And they would look at that and say, that's the base of what we are going to allow to be sold the following year. Some customers, like Mallinckrodt, would get a portion of that. Other manufacturers would get a portion of that, and it was based upon their previous sales. Okay, the same would be for the distributors, and that's what they would start off with for the year, how much they could buy. And the way that they bought it was with a 222 form, which the DEA would give them these forms in advance, and they would, I guess, request more as they needed them, okay, just as long as it was within their quota limits.
So it sounds like there are essentially two quotas being imposed. There's one being imposed on Mallinckrodt, and then there's another being
As a
imposed,
manufacturer.
Yes, one being imposed on Mallinckrodt as a manufacturer. Thank you.
Right.
And one being imposed on Mallinckrodt's customers, which it sounds like are distributors.
If you're looking at the bulk side, again, we're a bulk manufacturer and we're selling to bulk manufacturers who add, so they would buy it on their procurement quota, okay? So they would send us a quota form too.
Okay. So is the only difference between a quota form and a 222 form the nature of the customer submitting the form?
It's the nature of their registration.
Okay. And so focusing on the dosage products, let's say I'm a distributor and the DEA has given me a quota of 50 million pills, let's say for the year. And Mallinckrodt has a quota of, 200 million pills.
Okay.
I take it this means that my 222 form that I submit to Mallinckrodt can exceed 50 million. Is that right?
How much did you say they had?
Well, my overall quota is 50 million.
Right.
For the entire year, though.
Right.
And so when I submit a 222 form to Mallinckrodt, I mean, I assume it's so long as the number's not higher than 50 million, then it's okay, or try to sort of understand what the limit is for the specific 222 form.
Well, keep in mind that they wouldn't be bringing in 50 million tablets into their inventory. They didn't want to keep that kind of inventory. Mm-hmm. And that, again, would fall under the suspicious order monitoring program, so that large of a quantity at one time would be brought to the attention of the DEA, and the DEA would look into why they were ordering so much at one time.
Understood. But as a general matter, the 222 form, well, the quota being applied to the 222 form was likely going to significantly exceed any monthly order that the customer placed. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. So it's not as if the 222 form is really directly limiting the monthly order of a customer. The check on so much how much a customer can order on a monthly basis would be Mallinckrodt's algorithm.
Yes.
Okay. And that algorithm for the pre-2007 time period was based on 2 times your yearly average. I'm sorry, your yearly monthly average.
Are we speaking on bulk?
No, I was talking about dosage products.
Oh, okay. I didn't have it at that time. I believe they did have similar report, but I'm not sure what the algorithm was at the time. That came under Kathy Stewart's watch.
Okay. But for the bulk products that you were in charge of, the algorithm was 2 times the monthly average?
From what I remember, that's true.
Okay.
Rolling average.
And I'm sorry, what's the difference between a rolling average
It's not a
and
calendar.
average?
It's not a calendar period. It's a 12-month period.
Okay. So it's still 12 months. It's just you don't go from January to January. Okay. And so in the bulk context, if my monthly average was, let's say, 50 kilograms,
okay,
I could go up to 100 kilograms on my next order.
Correct.
And then, of course, if I order 100 kilograms, that would affect my average.
Correct.
And so, over time, if you're using a 2 times algorithm, the monthly limit on what you can order could increase significantly. Isn't that fair?
Object to the form.
It could.
And was there any? Well, if you were to look at, let's say,
keep in mind
sorry,
they keep in mind, they could increase what they were ordering as long as it was within their quota from the DEA.
Understood.
And then outside of our monthly report that went to the DEA, which the DEA was fine with, okay, with what we use for our criteria. We also, the customer service reps were quite familiar with who our customers were. And because there wasn't a huge number of bulk manufacturers that we were dealing with. Like there wasn't new players all the time, so we had a pretty good understanding of what their needs were. So if there was something out of the ordinary that our CSRs saw, they would bring it to the attention of our Karen Harper, and just make her aware of it if she felt there was a need to look into it with the DEA or whatever.
And this is for the bulk narcotics process,
That's
correct?
correct. That's what we're speaking to, yes.
And so in 2008, who took your place with respect to bulk narcotics? Who assumed your position?
Kathy Stewart. So we switched.
Okay, you switched. And do you recall who has, or do you know who has your position now with respect to dosage products?
No, I sure don't.
Okay. So, sir, you're aware that this case is about opioids. Is that fair?
That's true,
Okay.
yes.
Would you believe that there's an opioid crisis in this country?
That's what I have heard, yes.
And when you say that that's what you've heard, what do you mean by that?
Well, on the news and that, I've heard that there's been a opiate epidemic, yes.
And do you believe that's accurate?
I can only, from what I've heard, I don't know personally.
But you don't have any reason to believe that that's not true?
No.
Do you believe that the drugs sold by Mallinckrodt contributed to this epidemic?
No, I don't believe that. And why I say that is Mallinckrodt was at the top of what I'll call the chain, in that we manufactured the product. We did not manufacture we manufactured it, we shipped it, sold it to our distributors. The distributors sold it to the pharmacies sold it to the physicians, and the physicians sold it to, or prescribed it to the patients. We were not in the position to, I guess, ever send the pills to a end user.
Well, when you say that there is an opioid epidemic, what's your understanding of the nature of the
I didn't
epidemic?
say there's I agree with you that I believe that, from what I've heard, that there is.
Okay. And so you've heard that there is an opioid epidemic.
Mm-hmm.
What is your understanding of the nature of that epidemic?
Well, it's from diversion of not only prescription medicine, but from illegal products that are coming from other countries and that type of thing.
And
It's not all prescribed or prescription controlled medication.
Would you agree that the prescription controlled medication is a significant component of this epidemic?
From what I've read or heard.
And when you say diversion, what do you mean by that?
It's not being prescribed for its intended use.
And when you say prescribed for its intended use, what does that mean?
For medical purposes, for the control of what I consider medical use is that the pills or the product that we sold to other manufacturers who made a finished good, intended use was for pain relief, okay? And for people that were suffering from long-term illness that needed pain relief, cancer patients, surgery, people that had surgery. That's what the intended use of the opiates that we sold were for.
And I'm just reading along, I'm just reading on the screen, but you indicated that your understanding is that the products being sold by Mallinckrodt were for long-term illness that needed pain relief, cancer patients, and surgery, essentially cancer pain or acute pain. Is that fair?
Some of that, yeah, that's some of the major applications.
Okay. Do you understand what chronic pain is?
Objection to the form. Go ahead.
Chronic pain is, from what my understanding of it is for people that have constantly in pain. Okay, I can say like my brother-in-law who has a chronic pain in his back, and it's just every day is a hard time getting out of bed.
And so in your opinion, should he be on opioids?
To the form. Go ahead.
In my opinion,
Yes.
that's up to his doctor.
Do you believe that opioids are addictive?
I believe that they can be addictive if they're abused.
And do you believe that opioids are being abused?
From my understanding and what I've heard, yes, they can be abused.
Okay. And what are the risk factors for opioid abuse? Do you know what any of them are?
I'm not familiar with it.
Now, I just wanted to make sure I understood your understanding of what the term diversion is. But what could you define diversion for me?
The way I think of diversion is that the something that is being used for is not being used for its intended use. I guess it's the simplest way I can think of it.
And when you say not being used for its intended use, what do you mean by that? Are you talking about the doctor is not appropriately prescribing it? Or what do you mean by not being used for intended use?
I guess that would be part of it, yes. That the doctor is prescribing maybe more than what the patient needs, or product is being brought over from other countries, that type of thing. It's not for its intended use as a medical need, I guess.
So the fact that a patient is taking an opioid pursuant to a prescription doesn't necessarily mean that the patient is not abusing opioids. Is that fair?
Say that again?
The fact that a patient is taking opioids pursuant to a prescription from a doctor
Pursuant to a prescription
does not mean that the patient, well, strike that. Let me re-ask that question. A doctor could misprescribe opioids. Is that fair?
I guess they could.
And you've indicated that would be one example of diversion.
Yes.
Okay. So if you had a patient that was taking opioids pursuant to a prescription that was improper, that patient would be abusing opioids, notwithstanding the fact that they had a prescription.
I guess that's possible.
And so in terms of what the problems are with diversion, or what the harms are with diversion, what in your opinion are the problems or harms stemming from diversion, the diversion of opioids?
Object to the form.
In my opinion, as a layman,
Well, in your opinion as someone that's worked for Mallinckrodt from 1976 to 2013 and spent the past 12 plus years in there.
Well, if they
business.
weren't using it for its intended use as a medicinal pain reliever, and I guess it could be abused, and if they abused it, they could become medically dependent on it.
And so diversion, one of the consequences of diversion could be abuse and addiction. Is that fair?
Correct.
Did you ever have any concerns about diversion while you were working for Mallinckrodt?
It was always a concern that we have the proper tools in place to keep that from happening, and I felt that we did with the regulations that we followed that were given to us by the DEA as far as needing the 222 forms in the bulk side on the quota forms. Also, we had the necessary data collection that the DEA asked us to submit to them, which went from the monthly letters to a more sophisticated reporting system later on as the DEA changed their needs, our requirements for us. I felt we had the controls in place to meet that.
Did others at Mallinckrodt ever express any concerns to you regarding diversion of Mallinckrodt products, opioid products?
That there was a diversion problem?
That there either was a diversion problem or that there was a risk of Mallinckrodt products being diverted?
No, not that I remember. Everybody was doing what they could and making sure that we were meeting the needs of the DEA, meeting the DEA compliance needs.
And did you understand diversion to be an issue of corporate concern for Mallinckrodt?
I believe it was a corporate concern, and that's one of the reasons why our controls were so tight.
And when you say your controls were so tight, what controls are you talking about? Could you list them for me?
Well, what I mean by that is what we've discussed already, is that we were meeting the compliance of the DEA regulations with requiring the quota letters and the 222 forms, which were required. Also, the letter that we in bulk and also on dosage that we were asked to submit on a monthly basis early on. And then as the regulations or as the DEA tightened their regulations and asked us to submit more than just the letters and actually end the letters and to come up with a more robust suspicious order monitoring program, we did that going forward. I always felt that Mallinckrodt was felt that it was very important as a citizen. I'm calling Mallinckrodt as a citizen to adhere and meet the needs of what the DEA was requiring over and beyond anything. That was kind of our corporate goal, I guess I would say.
Been going about an hour.
Sure. So why don't we take a 10-minute break?
You're going off the record at 10 a.m.